Hello, friends. So good to be with you today. We are in Revelation chapter 21. This is going to be talking about a new heaven and a new earth. I'll be real honest with you. That feels almost a little bit beyond our comprehension. Hard for me to wrap my brain around that. I don't know, and I'm sure you're probably much like me in the sense that we see life as it is right now. We know simply by the teaching that we've had that there's going to be this 7-year period of time that is going to be great tribulation. After that, Jesus is going to come and set up his kingdom. But it's a little complicated to know, what does that look like? What does that look like? What does it look like during that 1,000-year period of time? And for sure, a new heaven and a new earth? I mean, seriously, what is that going to be like? It's just a little complicated because we're just not used to thinking about what happens after the Great Tribulation. What takes place? I mean, by this time, let's say, for instance, we've come through the Great Tribulation period, and so many, I'm thinking, well, okay, not everybody's going to die in that Battle of Armageddon. That's going to be a battle that's going to be contained there with the nations that have gathered themselves together against Jerusalem. But that's not everybody in the world. I mean, when you stop and think about it, what's life going to be like, let's say, for instance, in Europe? What's life going to be like in Africa? In the United States of America? What's life going to be like in South America, Canada? I mean, when we begin to look at, we know that there's people that are going to be there. Listen, we've got, 8 billion people on this planet, and they're not just going to be wiped off the earth. They're people that are going to be alive when the Messiah comes. The Messiah is going to come. He's going to set his foot on the Mount of Olives. That mountain's going to split. Jesus is going to reign. He's going to rule right here on this earth. So by this time we've come through the Great Tribulation period, and if I can say it like this, many people's lives are just going to go on like normal. There's going to be jobs, work, families to deal with. People are going to have families during that time. They're going to raise kids over this 1,000-year period of time. It's going to be amazing. And Satan is going to be bound during this time. It's going to be a glorious time, really like never before, or at least that we can understand, because peace that is unprecedented is going to be bestowed upon us. People are going to live longer. The animal kingdom is going to be tamed. Jesus is going to be ruling from Jerusalem, with the saints ruling with him. You have a responsibility. You're going to be part of the ruling class of what Jesus is going to bring. Now, although evil and wickedness is pretty much going to be diminished because Satan is going to be bound for that 1,000 years, people are going to be born during that 1,000-year reign, and they're still going to have the sin nature. There's still going to be people who are going to be not saved. They're not going to be born again, but they're still going to be born in the natural. People are going to have children, and so people are going to be born during that 1,000-year reign, and they're still going to have that sin nature. They're still going to have that need for God, but it's going to be much different at that time because it's going to be much more peace. Not divided governments, not divided nations, because there's only going to be one king. And he's going to be ruling over all the nations. But at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan is going to be released one last time to deceive the nations. Now, no one born during those 1,000 years has ever been really placed in a position of having to make a decision for Christ. Christ is simply reigning, and he is ruling and dominating everything on this planet. And he's going to successfully lead the nations that Satan speaks of. He's going to be released at the end of that 1,000 years. He's going to successfully lead nations astray, and they're going to gather their forces once again to battle against the Lord in Jerusalem. And of course, Jesus is going to put an end to all of that, and he's going to end all the battles and wars, and Satan's going to be thrown into the lake of fire along with those who join forces with him. But that's the end of chapter 19 and chapter 20. So that's kind of what brings us to this point. Now we come to the end of the 1,000-year reign. And now we're going to begin to talk about a new home, a new destiny. Not the present heaven, not the present earth, it's going to be a new one. Now, I know this is a little hard for us just to even comprehend, but that's what it said. Jesus even said that. Jesus said, Matthew 24, verse 35, he said, heaven and earth will pass away, but my word will never pass away. And now John, the Revelator, he's not the only one who speaks about the new heavens and the new earth. You can go back to Isaiah chapter 65, verse 17. He said, see, I will create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create. For I will create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people a joy. And I will rejoice over Jerusalem, and I'll take delight in my people, and the sound of weeping and the sound of crying will be heard in it no more. Now that there is Isaiah 65. But Peter also said the same thing. 2 Peter chapter 3. I mean, you need to look this up. He said, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief, and the heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare. Whoa, what a dreadful thing. And then verse 11, let me just read this to you. He says, since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people do you think we ought to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the day of God and the speed it's coming. For that day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with his promise, we're looking forward to a new heavens and a new earth where righteousness dwells. So this concept, this isn't something that's just off the cuff what John's got. This is something that's been prophesied. It's been spoken through Isaiah. It's been spoken through the Apostle Peter. Who spoke by revelation concerning these things. So let's begin to look at this. I'm just going to read and comment a little bit on this. Chapter 21, verse 1. He said, then I saw, John, after this is at the end of the 1,000-year reign, he said, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. Now, obviously, the oceans, the water is the majority of this planet. But he said, in this new heavens, in this new earth, there's not going to be any more sea. And he said, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned, beautifully dressed for her husband. That's impressive. And he said, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. You want that word dwelling place is the word tabernacled. Now, it's the same word that John used where the word became flesh and tabernacled among us. In other words, Jesus is going to be walking and living among us. Where we go, he's going to be right there. He's not going to be in some other place. He's going to be tabernacling with us. So he said, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place, he is tabernacled. He's now among the people. And he will dwell with them, and he will be their people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. Wow, isn't that incredible? Now see, that's what is coming before us, and it's kind of amazing. I told the Lord when I was really just praying about this, I was trying to process, trying to think about what this could mean. The earth has passed away, and everything that we know, and there's a new heavens and a new earth built, and it's a little intimidating. It's a little frightening in the sense that it's beyond our comprehension what that might actually be. But John's giving a description of it right here, and he treasures, God treasures the relationship with us, that he says, I want to walk among you. I want to be among you. I want to tabernacle with you. Now somebody say, well, that's just Christ in me, the hope of glory. I understand all that. I know that. But it isn't just going to be in a spiritual sense. It's from the standpoint of us being in the natural and him being in the spiritual. It's going to be, we're going to literally be able to reach out our hand and touch him. We're going to be able, God is literally going to dwell among us, with us, by us, not just in us, but around us. And it says God himself, verse 3, he's going to be with them and he's going to be their God. And I love what verse 4 said. It said he's going to wipe away every tear from their eyes. Can you imagine that? And there's not going to be any more death, nor mourning, nor crying, nor pain. For the old order of things has passed away. It's almost incomprehensible. The old order, the way things have operated all this time, has passed away. This is a statement of who he is in relation to us. We're nourished by every level of his grace and of his love. And verse 5 said, he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. The old garments that you guys have had on, that's going to be taken out of the way. He said, verse 5, I'm going to make everything new. And then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and they are true. In verse 6, he said unto me, it is done. Isn't that amazing? That's kind of how God operates. That's how he's always operated. God says, I'm going to do something. He says it, and then he declares it to be done, even before it happens. But he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha, the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. And verse 7 said, those who are victorious, they're going to inherit all of this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. Now, unbelievers are not going to be present during this time. This is going to be people who have known him, who have been born again, who have aligned themselves with him. That's what it's going to be, because he says these other people, they're not going. As a matter of fact, verse 8 said the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the immoral, those who practice magic arts, idolaters, and all liars, they're going to be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. And he said, this is the second death. Now, what death is he talking about there? Because spiritual death, you're not going to die, guys. I'm just telling you right now, you have been created. God made us in his likeness and his image. There's no end to you. You're not going to die. It's not like your physical body. You may have a physical body that lays down and dies. The second death is a separation from the creator, the giver of life. To be separated from him in that context is death. That is death. To be separated from life, to be separated from his beauty, to be separated from everything that is wonderful and good about him. He said that is a death. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to be literally, for eternity, they're going to be separated from him, and it is a death. Now, we're going to here quickly look in verse 9. We're going to look at the bride of the Lamb. Okay, this is the New Jerusalem. We're going to look at how it's made, and you see, I just want to say this to you. God's a little bit extravagant. People carry on as though God maybe doesn't want you to have anything. But he himself is just a little bit extravagant. I mean, he really is. I mean, he's got this girdle of gold wrapped around him. He is something to look at. And especially as you begin to see how he built this city. He built his house. You know, that's like some of you might say, I'm going to build my house and I'm going to pave the streets like this. And I'm going to put these chandeliers in there, you know, and it's going to be gold or it's going to be whatever the case is. Well, that's just look at how God builds this thing. This is the New Jerusalem, okay? Here's what he said in verse 9. He said, one of these 7 angels that had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came to me and said, come, I'm going to show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me in the spirit to a mountain great and high and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down from out of heaven from God. And he said in verse 11, and it shone with the glory of God. Now we're going to see what that means is it literally is illuminated with the glory of God. Every part of it, every jewel, every thing it's like the city is going to. It says there's not even going to be any need for the sun. Why? Because the glory of God is its brightness. Its brilliance. It's all of these things that it is the reflection of the glory of God that is going to be there. So verse 11 said that it shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of precious jewels, like jasper, clear as crystal. You know, sometimes you can look at these wonderful jewels, and it's just it's almost like a diamond. You can hit it with certain light, and it disperses light. You see all of the different dimensions of that wonderful jewel as light hits it. Well, the glory of that whole place is going to be brilliance. It says it shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like jasper, that was clear as crystal. And it said it had a great high wall with 12 gates. So here you've got the city, and it's got this high wall around it. Walls are good, isn't it? It's the truth. Well, it's got this high wall with 12 gates. Now, this is going to be reflective of God's promise and his covenant with the seed of Abraham. But look at and I know. Galatians 3:29 says, if you be Christ, you're Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. I'm a child of Abraham. But still there was a absolute don't think that God forgot Israel. Don't think that God, just simply because who have been grafted in to the vine, don't think that he has forgotten the branches that have been cut away, because they're going to be grafted back. Okay? But it said, let me not get too caught up in there. It said there was a great high wall, 12 gates, with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. Now, I'm not going to take time to identify which one of those tribes were on the east or the west. You can kind of see, I believe it might mirror much of what took place with the tabernacle in the wilderness, because that's how they were laid out around the tabernacle. Each tribe was set out, three on each side. But it said there were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations. Now listen, this is really kind of interesting. 12 foundations, and on them were written the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Okay? These wonderful 12 foundations. And he's written the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Why would we think that God was through with the house of Israel? Now, you might say, well, what does the number 12 mean? Well, typically it means perfection. It means authority. It means the establishment of governments. It's often used in the context of government. That's pretty often. For instance, because Jacob has 12 sons, they form the 12 tribes of Israel. There's also the 12 minor prophets that kind of dot the text of the Old Testament. You know what they are: Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. We got through them all. But those are that God used that number 12 in many different occasions to establish that this is the foundation of what I'm building. It's complete. Its government is complete. It's full. Okay? Now, verse 15 says, the angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates and its walls. And the city was laid out like a square. I love this. Now listen, just let your brain go for just a minute. Okay? The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. And he measured the city with a rod and found it to be 12,000 stadias in length. That is as wide and as wide and high as it is long. Okay, now here's what that means. The city was laid out like a perfect square, if I could say it, like a cube. It was laid out like a cube. And he measured the city with a measuring stick, 1,500 furlongs, or I'm sorry, 1,500 miles. The Message Bible even says that. It says he measured the city with a measuring stick, 1,500 miles. He measured the city with a reed. Now, the size of the New Jerusalem is it's enormous. It really is. 12,000 furlongs, that equals 1,500 miles. That's kind of the same distance from Maine to Florida, 1,500 miles. The square footage of what's in there would be approximately the size of the moon. Henry Morris, he made this statement. Let me just read this quote to you. He said, "A city of this size is too large for the imagination to take in." John certainly conveying the idea of splendor, and more importantly, that of room for all. And Henry Morris guessing that there will have been 100 billion people in the human race throughout history. Now that's just his guess. And that 20% of them is going to be saved. That's 20 billion people. Now, right now, we only have about 8 billion people. Is that crowded? I mean, obviously it is. But he calculated that each person would have a block of about 75 acres on each face to call their own. Now, of course, what he's trying to do there is he's saying this is how big the city is. You know, it's a highly speculative. It's just a guess. But what he's trying to do was to say this is by comparison of that many people. Those billions of people, they would fit in that sphere, that cube, with plenty of room. There's plenty of room in the New Jerusalem. So it's going to be quite amazing. 1,500 miles high, 1,500 miles long, 1,500 miles wide. That is. It's hard to wrap your brain around, isn't it? I mean, it really is. But that's going to be the New Jerusalem. And verse 17 says, the angel measured the wall using human measurements, and it was 144 cubits thick. That's 200 feet. The wall itself is 200 foot thick. Verse 18 said, the wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass. Now, verse 21 is going to talk more about that in just a moment. It's going to talk about the pure gold as pure glass. Verse 19 said the foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. With every kind of precious stone. Think about that. Every kind that you can think of, the wall, they're decorated with that. God loves the brilliance of it. He loves like I said, he's a little extravagant. Somebody say, jewelry, you're just too much. Listen, God's just got it decorating the place. It's everywhere. If you don't like those kind of decorations, you're going to be miserable there, because the glory of God shines on and through all of those beautiful stones, not just for the fact of having a precious stone, but the colors that they're going to reflect, the beauty of what they're going to reflect, the elegance of what they're going to reflect is amazing. So he said here, the first foundation was jasper, which is much more of a multicolor. The second one, sapphire. That sapphire is more of a deep blue color. The third was agate, and agate is that's a greenish color. The fourth is emerald, which is bright green. Obviously, a lot of you have seen those kind of things. So the fifth was onyx. The onyx is kind of a reddish white. I don't know if you could maybe look at your fingernails and kind of see That's going to be what that onyx is going to be. The sixth one is going to be a ruby, which is red. The seventh one is chrysolite, which is a bright green color. The eighth is beryl, which is actually sea green. The ninth, topaz, which is transparent greenish. And the 10th, turquoise, is kind of an aquamarine color. There's going to be a lot of green in this. Incredible manifestation. The 11th is jacinth, which is more purplish. And then the 12th is amethyst, which is more of a purple color. So it's going to be colorful, to say the least. Think about it. Before we just blow past that, stop and process that for a moment. You've got these foundations that are just these multicolored, beautiful, extravagant brilliance of jewels and reflections, and of course the glory of God illuminates, and that's what it does. I mean, let me just throw this in here real quickly. You can see that happening. Look back in the day of Moses, whenever he was in the wilderness and the tree caught on fire, the bush caught on fire, but it wasn't consumed. Well, it wasn't fire as we knew it. It was the glory of God that got on that. Moses, when he said, I was up on the mountain with God, and he came down and his face was glowing. Same thing with Jesus. He went up to the Mount of Transfiguration and it said his garments glowed. Well, that's the glory of God. Ezekiel chapter 1 talks about that. Ezekiel chapter 1 said that God is clothed with glory from his loins up with light. He is clothed with light from his loins up and his loins down. It looks like fire. And it's magnificent. And that's what God was clothed with. It's the glory of God that just surrounds him and consumes him. And really, if you want to just take it down real quickly, go back to the garden. When Adam and Eve, what were they clothed with? He says they saw that they were naked. Well, what happened when they committed high treason? They were born again. Suddenly, the glory of God departed from them. They were clothed because they were made in God's likeness and his image. Well, what is his likeness? That wasn't just the fact that they looked like him in the face. That the glory of God was their garments also. God was clothed from his loins up to his loins down with fire, which wasn't fire, was glory. Same with Adam and Eve. And when they committed high treason, boom, light went out. What happened? They were naked. So you have to understand that light is going to be illuminating this wonderful city. It's going to be reflecting in and through every emerald. Dear God, I stand with fear and awe of that. I want to just see what God's done and think, you alone are God. I mean, it's just I stand amazed at what he's done. And you know what? Verse 21, he said something here concerning the 12 gates. Each gate was a single pearl. Now, it didn't say it was made of pearl. It said each gate was a single pearl. Yes, one fellow said, "Maybe you imagine the size of that oyster." Now, God made this gate is just one huge pearl. That's what it says. Verse 21, the 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. And again, I just say, stop right there. Just stop and just think about that for a moment. Sheesh. Wow. I mean, seriously, your brain just goes tilt. We can imagine it. We can imagine it, I guess. We can get some type of a picture, but I'm sure that any picture that we could get is just going to be woefully short, insignificant, really. That is amazing. Single pearl. Well, anyway, it went on to say in verse 21 said, the great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. Now, of course, it doesn't say the streets are gold. It says the great street. The street of the city was of pure gold, as pure as transparent glass. Wow. And he said, I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. Well, he tabernacles among us. And they're going to see his face. And that's going to be the light. Verse 4 of the next chapter says they're going to see his face, and his name is going to be on their foreheads. So there's not going to be any more temple, because there's no more need for sacrifice. And we will have him. He will be tabernacled with us, in us, around us. Suddenly, and even Paul made the statement, he said, you are the temple of the Holy Ghost. And I love that concept. Let me just quickly deviate for just 1 second. Temple is a place of worship. They would have to go in to the temple to worship. But Paul said, you are the temple of the Holy Ghost. Now what that means is no matter where you go, I don't care whether it's the desert, the other side of the world, I don't care where you go, the presence of God will always be reflective from that temple, which is you. No matter, I can be in the lowest place, the worst place, and the temple of God will present the presence and the goodness of God. I'm the temple. The place of worship goes wherever I am. Do you know how important that you are? That's why it's important that you go places that are dark. You're the light that God sends into darkness, because you're a temple. You're the temple of the Holy Ghost. You're the temple of God. And when you go places, that's an opportunity for worship and connection to God. That's when that comes out. That's how valuable that you are. Okay, well, here's what he said in verse 23. He said, the city does not need the sun nor the moon to shine it, for the glory of God will light it, and the Lamb is its light. Wow. Now, of course, I think about it like this. No nighttime. There's not going to be any sleep. The body doesn't need to renew itself. It doesn't need to refresh itself. We're going to have a new body. We're going to have a glorified body. Now, let me explain why. Excuse me. Let me explain why we're going to have a glorified body. This body that I'm in right now, that you're in right now, this is our earth suit. On this realm, this earthly dimension, this is our authority to have dominion. Our earth suit, this gives us authority on this dominion. Now, we can't get out of this thing. We go too far up and we'll die. We go even too far down in the ocean, we'll die. But within this realm, this body gives us authority. When you have a glorified body, which is going to be like God, that means you're going to have dominion and authority in every realm that God ever created. Isn't that amazing? It doesn't matter where it is. I don't care where the furthest side of the imagination, it doesn't matter. Your body will enable you to have dominion there, just like my physical body gives me dominion in this earth right now. It's going to be powerful. Well, the Bible said in verse 24, the nations, speaking of the Gentiles, they're going to walk by that light. They're going to live by that. And the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. Now, who are the kings of the earth? Who's that going to be? Well, let me just say, you are the kings and priests. He has made you to be kings and priests. And you're going to go out and have dominion, and you're going to bring your splendor into him. And this is a reference to us. We're going to exercise the dominion and the creation of God. Remember when Jesus talked about this, he said, you've been faithful over five talents. Be Lord over 5 cities. Your stewardship gives you dominion in whatever you're going to do. That's why it's important that you understand. Otherwise, what's the point for stewardship? If there's no reward attached to your stewardship, then what good is it? If there's no consequence as a result of your stewardship, then what good is it? But see, I'm a king and I'm a priest, and he said, when you've been faithful over these few things, I'm going to make you a ruler over these things. I'm going to make you a ruler over these cities, over this responsibility. So the kings of the earth, that's going to be you and I. We're going to rule and reign with him during that 1,000-year reign and beyond. We're going to, all of the things that God has dominion over, all of the things that God ever created, which where is the end of that? Can you imagine the dimensions? Can you imagine I don't know, even from our standpoint, the galaxies, the universes, all of those things, everything that God ever created, your stewardship places you in a place of having dominion over those things. That's going to be powerful. You might say, well, do you think that there's actually life on other planets? Sometimes I'm amazed at how small we really think. They've got these new telescopes out right now that just simply are having them totally rewrite astronomy. They're seeing things now that they almost don't even know how to comprehend what's out there. It's so big. But God created every bit of that. And every one of those things operates off of the same pattern that we have here. What's the pattern we have here? Well, we have the sun, and because of the sun, we have revolving planets that hold within its gravity. That's the pattern, literally, to every star. Every star out there has a gravitational pull that pulls planets in. The pattern is seen right here in ours. I think God has this one set aside. This is kind of the pattern. This is the little solar system that God is doing a special work with. I think all of the others. So that being said, I think everywhere where you see this pattern, there's life. He's not the God of the dead. He's the God of the living. He didn't create deadness out there. He created living. I would not be surprised that every single star doesn't house planets with life that God created. Every single one of them. And the point is that you are going to have dominion because you have been born again into the likeness of God. Recreated after his image. You're a born-again child of God. One translation said a new species of being that never before existed. It's phenomenal. And everything that is there. Now that's just in our natural. Now, from what's a dimensional look like? Somebody say, what's dimensional? Well, we can say it like this. The world of the spirit and the world of the natural, that's a dimensional difference. In other words, they can be here, but you can't see them. You can't touch them. They have to somehow make it from the world of the spirit to the world of the natural. And we know that that's happened because angels walk among us. Hebrews, chapter 13 said, be careful how you entertain strangers, because many of you have entertained angels without realizing they were angels. So somehow they came from that realm to this. That's another dimension. Well, how many dimensions are there? How many could there possibly be? I have no idea, but I guarantee you, whatever's out there, Jesus is the Lord of it. All of the handiwork of God, all the work of God is under the lordship of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so that's going to be what you're going to be over. You are the kings that he's talking about that is going to bring their splendor into the city. It's going to be amazing. Verse 25 says, On no day will its gates ever be shut, and there will be no night there. Okay? We have night because the earth is rotating away from the sun. That ain't going to happen there. It's not the same thing. And verse 26 says, the glory and the honor of the nations will be brought into it. Well, who's doing that? That's you. That's me. That's those who have carried them, been faithful over the stewardship that God gave them. They're going to be the one that is raising nations, and all of it's going to be brought in the glory of God. And now verse 27, it did give a little caveat here. It said nothing impure is ever going to enter into it. God's not going to allow that. Now, we had that problem with Satan at one time. It ain't going to happen again. I'm just telling you right now, it ain't going to happen. He said nothing impure is ever going to enter into it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Wow. Isn't that incredible? So there we have chapter 21 of Revelation that's powerful. And again, I want to say what I said earlier in the teaching concerning Revelation, period, is the fact that the Bible said, blessed is the one that read this. And it's not a revelation of the Antichrist. It's not a revelation of the false prophet. It's not a revelation of the Great Tribulation period. This book is a revelation of Jesus Christ. And everything that we see in here is a reflection of him and him alone. Now, these are some of the things that's going to take place, but his lordship is going to rise up. So chapter 21 is just simply powerful. And we've got one more to go. It's kind of hard to believe. We're going to be going into Revelation chapter 22, but this one has just really been powerful. And I hope you've enjoyed it. My desire is to spark your imagination, to spark your thinking, to think outside the religious box that we've been crammed into, and realize God's just a little bit bigger than we think he is. He's just amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If you think this will be a blessing to someone, would you please share it with them? You can, if you want more information, you can go to jerryedmond.com. I've got a ton of resources that are there. As a matter of fact, I've got the entire New Testament, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, that I go through just like this. And I think it'll be, those of you that want to be students of the Word, I think this will be a blessing to you, okay? But I appreciate you joining me today. This is very meaningful to me. I've developed so many friendships and relationships. And I just want to say your friendship is a treasure that I hold. I appreciate that. I value your friendship. Thank you for being my friend, okay? All right, love you guys. I really do. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next chapter. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.